Today's guest is an artist and a songwriter who hails from southern New Jersey and has since made her way out to Los Angeles, California. She found herself writing for artists and having songs internationally placed on the Billboard charts. And in 2020, she decided to start showing the world what she's really made of and releasing her own music. She is not only a songwriter, but she is an artist. Please welcome today's guest, Rachel.
Hi.
What's going on?
That was such a lovely introduction. Thank you.
Thank you. Of course. Thank you for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So let's bring it all the way back to New Jersey.
Okay.
How did you get into music? How did you hear about this world? What made you want to come out to LA and be a songwriter and an artist?
Well, okay. So I couldn't shut up. I started singing before I started talking. My mom says I would sit under the dining room table and play with my thumbs and just be like singing to myself when I was like a toddler. So then as I grew up, it was just like something I couldn't not do.
Yeah.
I would be like in school singing to myself and the teachers would be like, Rachel. And I'd be like, oh, I can't. Like I didn't know. And so
It's natural.
yeah, then I was thinking, like coming from a small town, like you start, like you ask for voice lessons and then you start getting classical voice lessons.
Yeah.
And so then I was like, oh, I'm going to be an opera singer. And then I realized like when I was like becoming a teenager, I'm like, the person who's going to be the opera singer is the person who eats, sleeps, breathes opera. And I am really good at this, but I don't feel that way.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I'm going to be practical. I'll do musical theater. So then I pursued that for like in high school. And I thought I would come home from high school and spend hours a day researching new musical theater composers. And I was really just into it.
So you were living and breathing musical theater.
I was. And then my senior year of high school, I wrote my first song and it was all over for me. I just like fell in love with it.
What kind of song was it?
It was kind of like a Christian worship song called Move Me. And I wrote it and performed it at like a church talent show.
Crazy.
And yeah, it just changed my life. I just caught the bug.
And did you see yourself still continuing the musical theater side of it, or did you see yourself kind of going over to the pop world?
At first, I didn't know. I just like, there was just like this hunger to do it. And then as I did it, I think it was very wrapped up in like my journey of health and wholeness as like a human. I realized that like I was, it's strange to talk about, but I was a bit like repressed as a kid and I would just like hide. And so theater was a way that I could express emotions and it still felt safe because it didn't have anything to do with me necessarily.
Yeah.
And then as I learned that I could use my own words and tell my own stories, the need for theater sort of left.
So what did you grow up on music-wise? What kind of music were your parents playing? What kind of music were your friends playing? What did you find for your own?
I was actually thinking about this the other day. My musical exposure at the beginning was very, very limited. In our house, we didn't listen to a ton of music regularly, but when we did, it was like Christian worship music. Totally.
Yeah.
And then as I like grew up, I would say I was like, there was like Christian contemporary music like Zoe Girl and Jump 5, which was like very cheesy pop music.
Yeah, it was starting to kind of go over into the pop world.
Yeah. And then as I started being like widening what I was exposed to, I really fell in love with like early 2000s pop R&B and Fleetwood Mac and Ella Fitzgerald and Bach. And it was kind of wide, but it would be just like this random smattering of stuff I could get my hands on.
What a crazy dynamic of music from, Christian pretty much Christian, more religious side of the music, going into the Christian pop side of the music, which was kind of like, what would meld the two together, into Bach and Ella Fitzgerald. And what a cool kind of mixture of music that I guess kind of creates a taste that is more catered to you.
Absolutely.
And when did you start like writing music to be a pop star?
Well, at first when I started writing music, someone that was kind of before I started writing music,
Mhm.
excuse me, someone who was a bit of an awakening for me was Sarah Bareilles. Her writing and lyrics gave me permission to like feel almost, and
Absolutely.
to be like me too. And I just would like dive into her songs and like live there for months at a time. And
Mm,
and I just felt so seen by her music.
yeah.
And when I first started writing, I remember being in a place where I was like, pop music, gross. Like, no, I want to be like indie and cool and like cryptic. And it was still wrapped up in the idea of hiding for me.
Mm,
And it felt safer to not say what I was trying to say.
yeah.
But then I sort of, as I became a writer, I sort of fell in love with the idea of access,
Mm,
of reaching people and being able to relate to people and give people a place to come and say, wow, I felt that too. And
absolutely.
so that really opened my eyes to pop music. And I was like, wow, this isn't just cheesy. This is wonderful because
Yeah.
we can relate to a mass audience.
Perfect. So you said that as a kid you kind of wanted to hide.
Hmm.
That's so surprising to me because I've met you a great amount of times, and the people that connect us, Curtis and Kirsten,
Yeah.
are two people that definitely don't hide. They are the life of the room, and I figured you to kind of be in the same boat as them. Like from who I know you as now as a grown up person, I mean you're like you got the energy. You talk to everybody. You know everybody by the end of the party or whatever we're at. When did that kind of transition start to happen, where you went from hiding to being, like a very personable, happy person?
Well, um, when I was when I was right before I turned 18, life
Hmm.
kind of cracked me open.
Hmm.
My brother was killed in a motorcycle accident,
Mm,
and it was something that I couldn't be okay with. I couldn't hide and pretend I was something else.
absolutely.
And that was like the beginning of a long process of being cracked very wide open.
Yeah.
Um, and that's a horrible thing to go through. There's no like, I got this out of it. It's great. There's no solace in that.
Yeah.
But a a thing that I love that has come is that I stopped hiding,
Mm,
and like the the world's when you lose what you say you can't lose, the world stops being so scary because you get through it,
yeah.
and it's like, what do I have to lose now?
Yeah, you learn to adapt, whether the situation is a good situation or a terrible situation. There's only one thing you can do in those, and that's adapt. And some people take away the opposite of what you did
Yeah.
and hide more, and some people don't. And some
Yeah.
people learn that there's no more time to hide. And it sounds like that's what you did. And I never knew that about you, but listening to your music, and I've been kind of going through it all before we sat down and did this, and the way that you're able to express yourself makes a lot of sense. You understand your emotions probably a lot better than a lot of other people do.
Mhm.
At what point did you realize that writing was the best way to express yourself and releasing music?
I think like healing is like a dark, messy process.
Hmm.
It's really ugly. And while I was going through that and kind of just like in the middle of my mess, writing has been something where it's like I go in and I write and I'm like, I don't know. I know that there's something to express.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know what that is
Mm.
in fullness.
Yeah.
But then as I write it and as I work through the song, I have realized that I can get myself like, oh, that's what I'm feeling, and actually find a way through something and find a way somewhere else.
It's almost less of a vehicle to share your emotions with other people, more of the therapy that allows you to figure them out for yourself.
Yeah, which vulnerability always leads to vulnerability. So in extension, it does reach other people. But I
Absolutely.
think for me, the things that are most true that I write definitely start as for myself.
Yeah, and I think you need to be writing for yourself, at least in a lot of circumstances. Not all, but in a lot of them. You need to write for yourself in order to come across as genuine and true to other people and allow them to grasp onto what you've learned.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your move from New Jersey to LA. When did that happen?
In 2016, September 6th, I think, I actually moved from Boston
You're good
to
with
Los
dates.
Angeles. Thank you.
She remembered when her first song came out, and I can't tell you when my last one came out.
That's okay.
It's part of it.
Yeah. And so I had spent 4 years in Boston,
hmm
and then I came to LA.
Killer.
Yeah.
In Boston, you were at Berkeley.
I was, yeah.
What'd you study?
I studied songwriting.
What was your take on the whole process of Berkeley and being a student of music?
I think it's a mixed bag.
Mhm.
It's a complicated thing because you invest so much and it doesn't entitle you to anything per se. However, it was the time and the space I needed to become a songwriter.
Yeah,
And so I am very grateful for that like experience.
totally. And I know, a lot of the people that I surround myself with out here, including, Curtis and Devin and all these people that we surround ourselves with together, are Berkeley people. And you hear a lot of different opinions on not even just Berkeley on its own, but going to school for music.
Mm,
And I went for a few years for engineering, and really at the end of the day, what everybody seems to get out of their experience isn't what they were taught. It
right.
was what they ran into, who they ran into, who they became friends with, the people that'll eventually be standing up at their wedding because they were in the back of the class, also wishing that they were in the thick of it in LA. But that time and place gave them the community that was necessary in order to continue and further. What would you tell somebody who's maybe deciding if they're going to go to Berkeley or not and wants to be in your shoes?
That's an interesting question. I don't think I have any great big advice, but I think go with your gut. Like you can't go wrong if you're doing what you feel convicted about and what you're passionate about, you'll find your way.
Go find your way, people. It's there. So tell me a little bit about when you first moved to LA, what that experience was like, and starting off. Were you starting off as a songwriter, or were you hoping to come here as an artist?
I came here as both.
Hmm.
I started pursuing songwriting knowing that I wanted to also be an artist,
Okay.
but I wasn't quite sure how to move forward as an artist at the capacity or the bigness that I saw myself.
Totally.
So I definitely fell into waiting for a while. But I pursued songwriting like full time when I first came out. I just would get in the room with anyone who would say yes to me and
And
just
that's huge.
do it.
That is such a big part of moving to LA. Everybody says, "Oh, I'm going to move to LA, but I don't know who I'm going to write with. I don't know who I'm going to make music with. I don't know who I'm going to live with. I don't know all these things." And part of the beauty of Los Angeles is that nobody knows what's happening until you're there.
Right.
And I listened to this podcast yesterday on this guy who climbed the 14 largest peaks in the world.
Wow.
And one of the things he was being asked is, how did you find the people to fund you? He goes, I didn't. They found me once I had the product ready. Once I knew what I was doing, people start finding you, and situations end up happening. And I feel the music industry is so similar, where if you want to find yourself in a specific room, you can't look to get in that room. You have to look to get in every room possible, and eventually that'll be one of them.
Right.
And I'm a big proponent of not waiting for anything to happen. You got to go fucking find it. It's there.
Yeah.
How did you start finding these rooms? Who were some people that you were writing with when you first moved out here that kind of helped move the dial for you a little bit?
Well, when I first came here, I was so grateful to have like my network from Berkeley.
Mm,
And so that was a great jumping off point.
absolutely.
And I was writing a lot with Jake Torrey and Rollo Spreckley, who are both big writers now.
Yeah, they're killer.
And um, and Jake and I in particular had one song that was with Eric Nam, and charted number 6 on the Billboard International charts. And so that was
Crazy.
incredible.
What did that feel
Um,
like?
it honestly felt like nothing. It was,
Yeah.
I was really disconnected from it. It, I, I wasn't even really aware it was happening when it happened.
Mm,
I was right in the middle of my mess,
yeah.
feeling lower than low, starting to pull back from writing for other people, and sort of just healing and hiding again. And so I can look at it in hindsight and say, wow, that's cool that that happened. That did move the dial, but I wasn't really aware of it at the time.
Totally. And part of that is really what this whole industry is about, where the biggest rooms you want to be in this industry don't pay you for a very long time. You don't see success for a very long time if you do it all. If you write a song that you think is the greatest song ever, it could take 5 years for it to come out, if it does at all.
Right.
And sometimes you really do have to kind of keep going with life as it is and allow these things to happen and be excited when they work out, but not disappointed if they don't. And
Right.
that's a big part of this industry. It's you got to keep your blinders on. You got to just keep moving forward. And obviously, you were in a position at the time where life was having its crack at you, and you had to figure out how you were going to go from point A to point B and make this career all happen, while also figuring out some of the hardest emotions that a human can go through. And I feel like a lot of these things kind of come together as the potion to make you,
Mm.
and don't get me wrong, nothing is ever warranted. Terrible situations, there's no good reason for them ever. Um, but being able to use your situations as your fuel
Mm.
and do what other people aren't able to do is a very important thing for the world. It helps the world keep moving and it helps people grow. And I guarantee that there's some young girl or some young boy sitting out there right now who has a similar situation. And it sucks. And life's really tough, but you're sitting here. You have incredible music. You have incredible
Thank you.
opportunities that you went and got. They weren't given to you. And a lot of that came after your situation. And
Mm.
I just want whoever's sitting out there having a similar experience to understand that life's tough. Life's always going to be tough in different ways, but life will always be beautiful in different ways.
Yeah.
And they come in waves. And sometimes you got to ride a wave in order to find the next part of it, whether you like it or not. And
Yeah.
that's part of the human experience.
I was writing a letter yesterday.
Mm.
How wild is that? I had a friend who is doing a challenge where he's writing a letter every day this year.
Mm.
And so he sent me a letter, which was lovely. And so I was writing him back. And I wrote that that there's so much light if we're willing to make space for it in the midst of all the other stuff.
Mm.
Because there will always be other stuff and there will always be darkness and always be painful or complicated situations, but there's also beauty and there's also goodness and light, and we just have to be willing to let it in.
Absolutely. And they come at the same time, and sometimes one is a little bit more blinding than the other.
Yeah.
Whenever a great situation's happen to you, there's always somebody in the world who's having the opposite. And I
Right.
think being aware that first of all, nobody's ever singled out. The world gives different versions of hell to everybody, unfortunately. But it's how you use your experiences to continue life and help other people grow and learn from those experiences. And as a songwriter and as of 2020, as an artist,
Hey.
you now have a platform to not only let other people know that they're okay and that they will be okay,
Yeah.
but to be with them on their journey.
Right.
How many times when life gets down on you, do you throw in headphones and hear somebody sing to you, and that helps?
Exactly.
And that's you now.
And that's such an honor. I think I also want to be careful to be clear that sometimes you can't see the light, and that's 1,000% okay.
100%.
I think being willing to accept that you're in that moment is like so much of the time we're like, I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm not disappointed. And how will you ever actually not get disappointed or heal from a thing if you're not willing to say it exists?
Absolutely.
So for me, I've found so much healing in actually being honest about the thing and looking it right in the face and being like, actually, I can't move from this. Actually, I can't see the light. For me, there was a few years where I had to pull back from writing and pursuing music professionally. I mean, I was teaching music and doing other things,
Totally.
but as a songwriter and an artist, to heal and kind of get myself back in the space where I was ready to be like, yes, I see the light. I'm ready to do this.
Absolutely. And time is time, and time takes as much time as it needs.
Exactly.
And, all we can do is understand where we're at and move on whenever necessary. But sometimes moving forward isn't the option. You have to move to the side and you have to go different directions, which allow you to hold on to what you already have, but
Right.
also take those with you. And all of your experiences are yours. And
Absolutely.
those are yours to write about. Those are yours to teach about. And I guess that's kind of the beauty of being in this industry is everything that happens to us, all of the negative and positive, all the fuck ups, all of the things that we do learn from, the things that we don't, we get the opportunity to help other people kind of maybe step over those issues with a little bit less friction.
Yeah.
Most people don't get that opportunity. When they screw up, they watch somebody else do it again and again and again. And we get the opportunity to have this guidebook that we're making of how to get through life with a little bit less friction.
How cool.
Or at least to absorb the friction and use it as power, as energy.
Mm-hmm.
Before we wrap this up, I'm really curious, at what point did you know that you were ready again? That you were ready to create and to be an artist?
That's a great question. I feel like I knew I was ready when I don't know that it was a moment. I think it was many moments that kind of built up to be like, okay, I have to do this. Like, I have to come out of hiding. Like, I have to start moving forward again as an artist. Sorry, I'm pausing because I'm trying to think of.
No, that's okay.
I think at the beginning of 2020, I felt like things were starting to move forward for me, and then the world shut down. Yeah. And as soon as the panic subsided, I just felt this sort of commissioning inside myself to be visible. And I knew I had to come into the light. Like, I knew I had to start just being in the world again. And so I started producing my songs with a friend over Zoom and making these funny videos called Tunnel Tune Tuesday. I would go into, there are these tunnels in Glendale near my house, and I would go into them and sing covers and post them on a Tuesday. And
that's sick.
It felt so small and vulnerable, but I just had to start being in the world again.
I love it. From hiding to shining.
There we go.
So we got to wrap this up, but last question. How did you become obsessed with Paris?
Oh my goodness.
I did my digging.
Obsessed with Paris.
AKA Kirsten is the plug.
I started my love affair with Paris when a friend of mine who's from Austria, his sister was living in Paris, and she came to visit us at school in Boston, and we all went out to dinner, and she just said, if anyone wants to come and stay with me in Paris, come and stay with me in Paris. And I said, oh. And I bought a ticket.
Oh, wow, you did it.
I did it. And so at the beginning of 2015, I just took this little trip to Paris by myself.
How cool.
I know. And it was like just a little bit of magic. There was more beauty than you could take in everywhere you looked. And
crazy
croissants and Notre Dame. And it was just stunning.
It's the whole thing. I love it. Well, thank you. Thank you for coming on and for sharing, with everybody your story. I really do think there's a lot of people out there who are gonna their solace will be found with hearing that they're
Mm,
not the only one, and that life happens to everybody in so many different shapes and sizes, and at so many different extents, and with so much different with such a different amount of impact on everybody. And the only thing you can do is understand that the light is not always seen, but it'll eventually be there.
absolutely.
And that moving on is not forgetting. Moving on is continuing with even more passion and with even more story and energy behind you. And I think that's what you're doing. When's the next song coming out?
Thank you so much.
Of course.
My next song is coming out April 7th.
April 7th, everybody. Can you tell us what it's called?
It's called What If I Forget? And it will be
What if she forgets?
available everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
So follow along.
Everybody, go hit her up. Her music will be out soon. Her new music. She's already got a bunch of music out, and it's phenomenal.
Thank you.
And thank you so much again.
Thank you for having me. This was
Anytime.
wonderful.
We'll do this again soon.
Ah.
And go stream the music. It's out. And to everybody listening,
I am Rachel Siegel, and this is an experiment.
goodbye, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The experience is the experiment.